Alright, so I'm going to start working on this power steering pump for this tractor. And I don't know how successful this is going to be, because this is the condition the pump was in when I pulled it off the tractor, with the exception of the socket. There was no cover. There was a filter with the retainer on it, but there was no cover, there was no oil, and the pump is locked up. I don't know if that's because of a bearing or if it's rusted solid, but we're about to find out. And I don't know what the whole zip tie deal was here. I don't know if they was trying to keep something on here or what. I do not know. We're going to go ahead and just throw them in the trash. So there's my turnbuckle to tension my belt. I got it here as well. And like I say, here's the spring retainer for the filter. And I went ahead and bought a new lid and the clamp. So the first steps you're going to do is you're going to remove the filter. And if you look at this retainer, there's a little hook right here, which basically just goes in here and kind of hooks down in that port. So you just have to kind of push it and pull it out to unhook it. And I got a bunch of crud of some kind in there already. So we're off to a great start there. Next thing you're going to do is take off this big nut down here. Now once you get this nut off, you're going to pull the filter base and the retainer off. You can see all the crap that's in here. So this has been open for quite a while because there's grass in here. Then the reservoir will come off. Nice and pretty in here. And here you have two O-rings, or what should be O-rings. And as you can see, this is crammed full of some kind of crud. So that's not bearing too good of a fortune right there, or future, I guess you could say. We have a painted stick. So this pump may be absolute trash, I don't know. But right now it ain't looking too good. Hey, look. There's the pin that holds it in place. That shouldn't be there. And another stick. And what's funny is this thing actually had a pin on it, holding it. From what I remember anyway. So the next thing it's going to take off is this pulley. Now, if your pump's not locked up like mine, you will more than likely have to use an impact to take this bolt out. Who knows, I might free mine up here. I did see it try to move, so that's maybe a good sign. Well, we got a bolt lock washer that looks to be captive and a big thick washer. Let's see if we can get this pulley to slide. No. Alright, so if you have to remove this pulley, well, we got to remove it, but if you're having trouble removing it, put the bolt back in it without the washer, and we're going to use a jaw puller to pull it off. Okay, so I couldn't find my 3-jaw, so I broke out the 2-jaw puller. And let's see if I can get this pulley off of here. Alright, so I got the pulley off without damage. Go ahead and pull my screw back off, or my bolt, I guess you could say. And got a little keyway right there. See if I can get that out. Pliers got that out, that's a good sign. So, the next thing we're going to do is we have 5 bolts here. 2 of them's holding the bracket, and then all 5 of them's holding the pump halves together. Okay, so there's our 2 bolts that hold our mount bracket. And there's our 3 shorter bolts that hold our pump pieces together. Now, should be able to separate them. And our survey says pump is probably trashed, as you can see how rusted it all is. And I highly doubt I can clean this stuff up even with electrolysis and get this back to functioning properly. So this stuff is kind of like mud. So the only saving grace would be is if there's any oil in it, that it did not pit surfaces too bad. But if there's any pitting in it, then it's pretty much garbage. There's some areas of this that's coming clean. Let me go shoot this down with some brake cleaner and hit it with a light wire brush and see how damaged this is. Okay, this section in here is kind of coming clean. This one right in here, if the camera will focus for me. This section right in here, I'm not 100% sure on. So this might be okay. This here's pretty bad gummed up. these rollers, they're pretty locked up. But I'm gonna just cut the camera off for now, and I'm gonna kind of assess everything, and I'll come back and let you know what I find and what I plan to do. But as it is right now, it's probably going to be unsalvageable, and probably most of it is going to stem just from this piece here, because I still have, you know, flow control here and elbow here that all have to come apart. And if they're any bit bad, then this pump's just junk. Alright, so on power steering pump, I took the rest of mine apart, and I found that the flow control valve spring was broken. You cannot buy this spring, so I'd had to run a generic spring, and without knowing the spring rate, you're kind of just guessing at everything. So that, coupled with the severely rusty, muddy, whatever roller vanes, I figured it'd probably be my best interest to get a replacement pump. It's like, I still want to see if I can fix this just to test my skills, but it's not going to be a running pump. So I purchased this pump. This came off of a running tractor, so hopefully everything's okay with it. It actually came off of an 841, even though it's painted blue. I don't know why. But all these pumps, whether it's a 600, 800, 1000 series, row crop, it don't matter. They're all the same. All have the same flow and everything. So any one of them will work. So let's get this one apart and see what kind of condition this one's in. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. This pump does turn. Okay, so we got a little bit of moisture in here, but everything looks a-okay. A little spacer washer there on the end of that shaft, the other one did not have. Either that or it's rusted in. So keep that in mind. Which I'm probably going to see if I can find some new bushings for this anyway. Can't buy them from the dealer. They say they come with the housing. The ring's good and supple, so that's good. Okay, yep, rollers are nice and loose. So right now this pump's a whole lot better than what I took off my tractor. A whole lot better. So I'm going to set this aside for 1 second because I want to see if the flow control valve spring is any count. Spring's good. So that's a good thing. So there's our flow control valve spring. There's the flow control valve. So this is a good rebuildable pump. So this is the one that's going to be rebuilt and put onto the tractor. Alright, so the last piece I'm going to go ahead and pull off on this is going to be the pressure line fitting. If I can remember where I had the right socket. Now this piece was actually better on the one that came off the tractor. So I've actually got this in electrolysis right now, cleaning up. Once it's cleaned, I will get it replated. But just kind of like around this area, the one off the tractor just felt better. So there's the back of this housing, or the back of the pump, cleaned up. Like I said, I'll kind of look at these bushings. I'd really like to try to replace them. So now, up here on the front of the pump, an actual pump mechanism, so to speak, we have this shaft in the middle, along with a key that is a small cylinder. The shaft is pretty self-explanatory. It only goes one way. One end's solid, the other one has our bolt hole. Same with the key, it's just a dowel. Now on the vanes and this outer cam ring, try to keep them all in the same direction and in the same location. And that's just for wear, basically. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull out each of the little rollers first. Get them just kind of wiped down because they got a little bit of oil and water on them. I'm just going to kind of set them in a star pattern here. Now I'm going to pull the rotor out. And I remember that this one right here is my last one, which is kind of like 2 away from my key. But you probably don't have to be this precise. It's like I just like having the wear parts back in their same locations. So I'm going to take that, kind of set it back into my rollers, keeping the last one there open. Now I'll pull the race, or the outer cam ring, and same for it, just keep it, you know, up or down. That's all that really matters with it. Now with this one, down has a notch, and that notch, there's a little pin right there, kind of towards the very top, that'll align that cam. Again, the last part on this pump is going to be this seal right here, and I might be able just to pry it out. If you pry it out, try not to gouge into the pump body. You just want to barely catch the seal. And so what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to put this back together, and I'm going to seal everything up, and then this is going to get sandblasted. And I might go ahead and paint it at that point as well, or at least prime it. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But that's it for disassembly of a good pump and a bad pump. So hopefully you know what to look for now, and you can determine if your pump is salvageable or not. And now we'll get it cleaned up and rebuilt. Alright, so got the power steering pump sandblasted and painted. Got some parts replated. Got some others just cleaned up. I've got a reseal kit. I have a new filter, and as you can see, this is a Ford part. There's a number off of it. I bought this one from a tractor supply dealer, not the actual store, but like a tractor parts dealer. And this filter is wrong, even though it claims it was right. So I ended up finding an NOS one off of eBay, and that's what's going in it. As for the seals, Steiner Tractor has a seal gasket kit, and I'll put that at the bottom of the video for you. I got every part laying here with the exception of the reservoir. I have it just off to the side for now just because it's big, and I don't have the decal handy at the moment. First thing I'm going to do is I want to put the new bushings in here. And the bushings that I got, I purchased from McMaster-Carr, and I'll put the part number for that here at the bottom of the video as well. The bushings that were original, you cannot purchase separate as using a Ford part number, so I just measured them and got the right ones. Now to install these, I just have a bushing install tool. I'll stick them in there and just drive them down until they're flush. And that one I went a little low, maybe a couple thousandths, but it should be fine. It's probably actually better to be a little low, in all honesty. And on the rear, same thing, just make it flush, if not a little bit under. I'm going to try and just hold this one and try not to beat on my new paint. Okay, so there's that one installed. Let's give it a quick check here. Good and good. Now, so the next piece that we're going to install is going to be the sill itself. The flat side was going to go towards the outside of the pump. The spring will be towards the inside. And that, just hammer until it's flush. And once you get this sill flush, it's still not in far enough to completely seal this. So you're going to have to go in further until it bottoms out. And that looks to be maybe a 1/16 of an inch below the surface. Okay, so now that we have our sill installed, the next piece we're going to install is going to be the cam ring. Now this cam ring has a keyway in it right here. If you look down into the pump body, you'll see a pin at the top. That notch needs to line up with that pin. And when you do, this should line up flush across the top. The next piece we're going to install is going to be the center vane with the rollers. I'm just going to pick up all of them at once. Lift it up and drop it into place. Next we're going to take our shaft and we're going to put a little bit of silicone onto it where the sill rides, just to give the sill some lubrication for startup and to help the sill slide over the shaft. And we're going to take our little keyway, that's a dowel pin, and put it in as well. And we'll slide everything down in. Once you get that installed, there's a little snap ring right here that'll fit flush against your vanes. You can see how our sill is down there now, so everything's good there. So now I'm going to set that up here off to the side for a second. Now on the cover, there's this little thrust washer. And if you look at this thrust washer, one side is kind of flat, the other side is beveled outwards. The outwards bevel needs to go towards the rear of the cover. Plus you can probably see some scratch marks on it from where it was originally. And that'll just slide down into the back. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead, Take this O-ring here that's about 3 inches in diameter. We're going to place it in the groove there between the body and the cam ring. It's a little loose, but it should stay in place. Then we got this other one that's about a 5/8 diameter. It's going to go up here on top, this little inlet hole. Now we'll take the back side of the pump and we'll slide them together. Then we'll take our bolts. We'll go ahead and get this thing bolted together. Which our 3 short bolts are going towards the outside. Of course, the long bolts will be here on the inside with our bracket. And these bolts are going to get torqued to 20 to 25 foot-pounds. Let me see if I got a torque wrench handy. And now that it's torqued down, just go ahead and give it a quick spin, make sure everything turns freely. And this one seems to be turning good. Albeit just a little on the stiff side, but it does spin freely. Alright, so once you verify that everything spins, go ahead and take your bracket and these 2 bolts back out. And that's because we have to install this valve. But you can install this valve ahead of time if you want. I just didn't. And we're going to slide this flow control valve down into the bore here. The nipple, I guess you could say that's what it is to be considered. That's going to go in first. And that should slide down pretty easily. The next thing is going to be our spring. And I know that spring looks new, but that's actually the one out of this pump. I just replated it. Next we have the cap and this about 1 inch diameter O-ring. That'll slide onto the cap. And we'll get this put on. And that's going to get torqued to about 30 to 35 foot-pounds. Alright, so now that that's valve is in there, the actual outlet for our pressure hose we can reach later. So now let's go ahead and put our bracket back on and final torqued. Okay, and now we can put the pulley on it. Go ahead and put the Woodruff key back in there. Then we'll take the pulley. And there's a dished side and a flat side. The flat side is going to face towards the outside of the pump. And we'll put the big washer and the bolt back. This gets torqued to 15 to 20 foot-pounds. However, I'm not going to put anything in here to hold my pulley. So I'm just going to take a little impact, just give it a couple little whacks. And it's good. And of course, give it another test spin. Now, for whatever reason, your gasket kit does not have the O-rings that go on here. So you're going to have to source these O-rings yourself. Okay, it looks like we're going to have two different kinds of O-rings here. And we're going to take our flare fitting, and that'll slide over that O-ring. I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of WD-40 on there. And that's just to keep it slick. That's all that's for. Now the next O-ring is going to kind of sit down into this groove, and then it's going to seal up against the pump. And that'll just go right here on the pump. And that just needs to face straight backwards. And there's not really a torque spec on that in the book called out, so I would just tighten it down good and tight and roll with it. And like I say, I'll know if that leaks pretty quick. So that's basically the pump portion complete. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is put on the reservoir. We got two of these little O-rings that are square cut. One's going to go right there, the other one's going to go on there. So we're going to take our reservoir, and it's going to sit down on top of those two. And then a reinforcement plate is going to go in with these two tangs sticking up and the curved side towards the back of the pump. You can kind of see that there. Trying to hold this steady and it's going to roll. Well, next is going to be our filter base, and it's going to have the return slide into that hole there, and then we'll put our retainer on it. And then that's going to get torqued down to 30 foot-pounds. There's a look down into there. So the next step is going to be to install our filter. Which there's no direction, but I'm going to put the Fomoco logo out. And that just sits down in there. And then we take our retainer, and this hook's going to reach down in there into this hole, and we're going to hook it. And that can be a real pain in the butt. Once you get it clipped in, that filter ain't going nowhere. Everything should be fine to roll. So the last part to put on is going to be the cap and the bell, and of course there'll be a decal right here, which I'm going to wait till I put this on the tractor to do the decal. But as for the cap, the gasket kit comes with 2 of these big flat O-rings. You're going to use the larger one. Just go ahead and just slide it down into the cap itself. And that'll fit over top. And then you just have the bell, and it'll go around it. And I'm not going to tighten mine down since there's obviously no fluid in here. But anyway, that's how you rebuild these power steering pumps. They're pretty simple, nothing really much to them. It's mostly just changing gaskets. But this is now ready to be bolted onto the tractor. We'll get it full of hydraulic oil. It uses the 134 hydraulic oil. And we'll get the system hooked up and bled.